Internet baby.
I was playing poker at the local casino and got into a hand with this guy who was wearing some sort of space-themed hoodie. The second the first 3 cards hit the board, I had the strongest déjà vu I have ever experienced. I had a dream about that exact moment like a year ago, and I knew the exact next 2 cards that were going to come out. They came out just as I had expected, to the point of me calling them, and I won a huge hand. What are the creepiest unexplainable things you've experienced? Came home from a date at about 11 p.m. House dark, didn't switch on lights 'cause I know my way around. Went straight to the bathroom. On my way back, down the passage I bumped into my dog, a Sharpie. He is as big as my mid-thigh. Told my boy I love him, and he should be sleeping, but good boy for checking on his mom. Opened my bedroom door, which was 3/4 closed, and switch on the light at the same time. Only to see him on my bed, sleeping, lifting his head when the light came on, to look at me. I would have heard him, or felt him move past me. I was alone. What bumped into me? This happened on a Sunday morning in 1961 in my home area of eastern Kentucky when I was 19 years old. I was driving on a winding mountain road during a light rainstorm on my way to visit a girlfriend at her parents' rural home. I was coming down a steep road cut into the left side of the mountain when the car slid into a ditch against the mountain, and then to the left across the road and over a cliff, with about a 100-foot drop into a creek bed. The car rolled a couple of times and landed right side up. I was able to get out with what looked like just a lot of cuts on my arms from glass. I realized I was about 20 miles from town in a lightly traveled area on a Sunday morning, when most everybody was in church. This was years before EMS or 911 or cell phones or any similar assistance. I realized I would have to climb up the cliff to the road, or no one would know I was down there. I bent forward and grabbed a small tree to pull myself up, and as I leaned forward, something warm and wet came pouring down my face. I reached up and felt the top of my head. I could feel my skull. I had a huge cut across the top of my head, ear to ear, and my scalp was hanging down the back of my neck. I pulled it back in place and tried climbing again. As I leaned forward again, I noticed that up the mountain to the right about 75 yards, was an old house built into the side of the mountain, and a short dirt road leading to it from the main road. Even though I had traveled the road across the mountain many times, I had never seen the house because it was not visible from the main road. There was an old car near the house on the road and a man sitting on the edge of the porch. When he caught my eye, he walked out to his car and backed out to the main road until he was above me. He rolled down the passenger window and yelled down, "If you can get up here, I can take you to town to the hospital." He never got out of his car. I grabbed another sapling and began a very difficult climb up, but I made it to his car and got in. This was 1961 and the car looked to be about 10 years old. The fellow was about 30 years old, thin and wearing slacks, a shirt and a fedora hat. I slumped down in the seat against the passenger door. He only said one thing during our drive of about 25 minutes to the town of Painesville, Kentucky: "You're losing a lot of blood. I saw wounds like this in the war, and if you don't stop the bleeding you'll die. Take my coat, and hold it against the top of your head and press hard." He handed me a light jacket that was lying between us on the seat. There were 2 main hospitals in my town, and as we got to the outskirts he asked, "Which hospital do you want to go to?" Since my mother had worked at the downtown clinic, I asked for that one. We were in front in about 5 minutes. When he stopped, he said, "I can't get out, but you think you can make it in okay?" I said yes, thanked him and made it the few steps inside. I'm sure I left his car full of blood, and ruined his jacket. I got the scalp sewed up, 55 stitches, and was given some blood. I was in the hospital for a few days, but I recovered. When I got home, I found that my father had had the car pulled up the cliff. It was totaled. He said to me, "Now we have to go back out to that fellow's house, and thank him, and see if we can take care of cleaning his car." When we got to the little road that led to the house, where he had been sitting, things got very weird. First of all, the little road that led to the house was covered up with weeds at least waist high, with no sign that a car had ever even been there. It had only been 3 days since the accident, which was not enough time for them to have grown. I distinctly remember he was parked on that little short road. My dad and I parked at the end of the road and walked through the weeds, called horseweeds, to the house. It was a simple little frame house that would have a bedroom, kitchen and living room with a front and back porch and an outhouse. There was no sign that anyone had lived there in a long time. Some windows were broken, and there was no furniture. This was an area in the countryside where everybody knows everybody else in their business. As such, I asked my girlfriend's family if they knew who'd lived in the abandoned house, and learned it had been empty for a long time. Nobody knew the fellow who took me to town. Well, that's where the story ends. Almost 60 years have gone by, and I have often tried to answer many questions about the incident. Why would the man not get out of his car? Why was he right there at the house at just the right time? Was he just passing through the area? He was familiar with the town he took me to, because he knew there were 2 hospitals, and knew how to get me to one, and he knew how to find the house, even though it was not visible from the main road. He must have been a World War II vet, because he mentioned the war and he would have been about the right age, but it could have been the Korean War. How was his car parked in an area completely covered in weeds a few days later? Well, I had just had a serious head injury, so did I remember everything correctly? I have decided either he was sent there to save me, or I was just unbelievably lucky, as I could have bled to death before anyone ever found me. I may have been able to walk on down the ravine to where the road met the bottom of the hill, but that would have been a long walk with more loss of blood. How was I able to climb up the cliff to his car when I knew he was there, if I couldn't do it before I saw him? Now that I am 77 years old instead of 19, I have told this true story to several people who have had similar experiences, and they have suggested the stranger was an angel sent to save me. There may be no other explanation. I had just moved from New Hampshire to my current home in Maine. It's important for you to know my 3 sons moved with me, the youngest being almost 2 at this time. He was short with beautiful blonde hair. This incident happened 4 or 5 months after we moved into my house, which is 114 years old now. A couple times, when I had been sitting in the computer room, messing around on the computer between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m., I heard my back door open, shut, and 4 or 5 footsteps. Now from where I was sitting at my computer, I could look right through the kitchen to the back room, where the footsteps came from. I thought it was strange a friend would be using my back door, especially at that time of night. Seeing no one, I got up and went out into the back room. No one was there and the door was locked. I have heard lots of footsteps at night when no one is home, and the kids are in bed, asleep, but that isn't the strangest thing that's happened here. I was on the phone with my mother one night around 10 p.m. I have a habit of pacing when on my phone, so I was wandering from the front of the house to the haunted back room. Sure enough, just as I got to the front of the house, I heard the back door open, close, and some footsteps. I made my way to the back room, knowing no one would be there, and sure enough, no one was. Just as I was getting to the doorway to head back to the front of the house, I saw a small blonde boy run across the kitchen. My first thought was it was my youngest, so I went out into the kitchen thinking I gotcha now. I looked everywhere a kid could hide, no one was there. I ran upstairs and sure enough all 3 boys were sound asleep. As I walked back downstairs, I realized that when the little boy ran across the kitchen, there were no footsteps. I have to be honest, I felt my hair stand on end a bit, and I got goosebumps. I have seen the little fella a few more times over the past 16 years, but he may be gone now. We remodeled the house and I haven't seen him since. If I had only seen him once, I would have written it off as me imagining things. But seeing him multiple times over the years, nope, I'm not imagining it. I have a story that's kind of creepy. I don't really find it so, but most people I tell end up wincing, with a grimace on their face, and a visible shiver through their bones. I also heard it secondhand, and don't remember it happening to me, so I can't corroborate or debunk the story, but I find it fascinating if it's true. So, I always feel a little backstory is needed. When I was a baby, not quite 2 years old, my mother got sick. Very sick. She went to the doctor, and was diagnosed with cancer. Sorry, I'm not sure what type of cancer, or where, and the doctor told her the outcome was bleak, but they would try anyways. People have always survived worse. Well, at this point in her life, she was 42 years old, trying to divorce her useless, druggy husband who only showed up to steal all her money and one time kidnapped their baby, me, for ransom. That's another lovely story. She worked 3 jobs trying to support 7 children in a 2-bedroom apartment. Her 2 oldest could take care of themselves, but they both had their difficulties in life, and usually needed help from mom. Her oldest boy, at 11 years of age, who wanted nothing more than to explore the growing medium of video games and play his Sega Genesis, was forced to raise his 7-year-old brother and the baby, me. His 14-year-old sister wasn't going to do it. And his 16-year-old sister had just had a baby of her own, whoops. She didn't have health insurance since the jobs she had were at McDonald's, some other fast food place, and cleaning some hotel. And, again, she had no money, and what she did of her designated duties. I don't pretend for a second to have any idea the kind of things that go through a person's mind when news like this is given. I do know she ultimately chose the hard way out and let the cancer have its way with her. Not that fighting it, pumping poison into your body, and making yourself sick and weak, and bald is the easy way out, but to say, okay, I'm going to die soon, and that's all right is, to me, a crazy difficult decision to come to. Humans are persistent and resilient. We don't give up easily. If we can stand and fight, we usually will, especially if it means saving ourselves or loved ones. So, she did her duty as a mother, and sorted out a home for her kids. Her two oldest daughters moved out, and found places of their own. Her 16-year-old daughter moved in with the father of her child and his parents. Her youngest daughter was taken in by a cousin. Her two oldest boys moved in with her sister. And her younger brother went to court with her husband to gain custody of the baby. Now she was ready. It didn't take long. A few months after the diagnosis, from what I've heard, she moved into a hospital, and was placed on a morphine drip to help with the pain. At this point, I was well acclimated to my new living situation. I had more toys than I had ever seen in my life so far, of which I played with them all. I was dressed every morning, rather than only if we were going somewhere. Took a little while for me to stop going straight to the door after getting dressed. I was used to eating cookies and other sweets that an 11-year-old brother unknowingly thought were good for me. But after the move, I ate like a king. Full meals. Veggies. Fruits. Proteins. Carbs. I loved all of it. One day, I was sitting in the living room pulling toys out of a chest, and playing with each in turn. My aunt sat on the couch watching me play, probably watching TV or something as well. Across the room I had one of those toy rotary phones on wheels. The white ones with a smiley face, and a red speaker and a string to pull it around with you. According to my aunt, the phone started ringing with no one near it. Kind of weird, since I don't think they actually make noise, except for a ching, when you rotate the dial. But she says it started ringing, and, after a minute, I walk across the room, and picked it up. I said, "Hi, Mommy. Is it time?" "Okay, I know, I will. I'll be a good boy and listen to Aunt and Uncle. I love you, Mommy." I hung up, looked at my aunt and said, "Your turn," and went back to my toys. Before I sat back down, the house phone started ringing. My aunt answered. It was the hospital calling to say my mother had passed about 5 minutes prior. Ick if that's necessarily creepy, but I'll let you decide. Was my aunt smoking something strong? Was my mother's soul reaching out with its final strength through a toy phone to talk to her baby one last time? Perhaps I am psychic. Or was it just a little boy with more knowledge of his little world than he let on? Pretending, at the right time, to talk with his mother, that he barely saw for months, and every time he did, she looked ages older. Skin more wrinkled and sagging. Hugs and kisses lacking the same strength they once had. Less words spoken. Less time spent with each visit. I truly believe kids are a lot smarter than most people realize. Smart enough to know when something is wrong. When someone is sick. When parents are being abnormally nice to cover up an impending divorce. Maybe not a 2-year-old, but still. I am a 46-year-old Australian woman. This happened about 1977 or 1978. I have tried to tell my family and close friends about this, but no one believes me. They get freaked out, think I was dreaming or I fainted, but to me, it's as clear as day. I still see all this in my mind's memories. I can draw them, and recall every event clearly. When I was between 3 or 4, my mom let me go outside to play, while she was having a cigarette and listening to a horse race on the radio one late afternoon heading towards sunset. I was way down in the back of the long grass near the back fence. I looked up and saw a sparking silver object that was very high in the sky. It was like a silver balloon dot. In a few blinks of the eye, it was right there about 20 feet above me, and morphing from a silver metallic diamond shape to a pyramid shape. It was slate gray or gunmetal gray with alien writing on the surface side of the UFO. Like squiggly lines. In the next few seconds, I felt paralyzed with an intense fear in my gut. But I could not scream, or call for help anymore as I had no voice. My head was locked in a position, where I was looking up into a beam of white light. There was a spinning black hole with jagged edges above me, moving blades. I was screaming internally in terror, but still paralyzed and shocked. Then, I was being sucked up towards this black hole in the middle of the rotating discs. From this point on, I don't remember what happened next. Then, I wake up, and I am floating in a warm, black room. My arms and legs are in free movement, but I am floating, as if I'm in zero gravity. I was in a pitch black room. Not a speck of light. I was looking for light, but not a dot. I was wide awake and crying internally, waving my arms, crying, "Mummy, Mummy, help me, Mummy," but no sound would come out of my mouth. My voice was not working, as if they had turned my sound off. This went on for a long time. It felt like I'd been there for a week. In the next moment, I was back at the exact same spot and time as when I'd left. I bolted to the back door for Mum to let me in. I was crying and sobbing and Mum was shocked to see me so distraught. I believe I was taken by aliens. I don't remember being tested on or seeing the beings. I only have the clear snapshots of what I can remember as I've described. Mum tells me that I did not talk again till I was nearly 5. I felt I was in shock. I would cling to my mother's leg all the time after this, and never wanted to go outside or leave her side. And when the ad for the 1978 movie Alien with the green egg would come on TV, I would cry and scream and turn into an absolutely scared little girl. My family didn't understand why I was so petrified. I would have night terrors till I was 8 years old, because of my fear of pitch blackness, and feel my way around at night to find a light switch, TV or lamp to turn on. I started reading books about science, the unexplained, and the unknown, at the age of 10. Then, only last year, I found this on Google. It happened in Australia near Melbourne in the St. Kind Beach area. I also found out only last year about another UFO abduction in the same area, and in the same year.